It's really nice to be here with everyone today. I haven't spoken in a while. It's been probably, I've spoken maybe once or twice in the last year. And it was for various amount of reasons, right? One of it was, coming to these things, it's actually a real privilege. We talk about these amazing things about changing the world and changing lives. But then I go back and I see these communities that are plagued by violence and atrocities. And I ask myself, what are we really doing? Are we actually creating action? And, after I went to Hatch, it really renewed my spirit in it because I saw people actually doing. And that's one of the biggest messages that I want to say is, an idea is an idea until you actually just do it. And one of my great mentors said that. He really pushed me to say, James, stop thinking so much about it and take the first step. Behind me, you see a picture of me when I was a kid, looking mighty adorable, if I may say so myself. And I was just a kid like everybody else. I want to remind everybody that we all start out as children. We all start out with these innocent souls, these blank slates, just waiting to see what the world has to offer us. But even then, as a kid that would go to elementary school and begin to get straight A's and B's, I was born into an abusive family. So my reality wasn't coming home to a father that loved me, to a mother that would cherish me and help to nourish me and give me the love that I needed. I was coming home to a violent atmosphere where I would see violence daily. I would see my parents in these horrible arguments. And even worse, it started to get turned upon me. And I remember I'd walk home from school and I would wonder why I was the recipient of their anger. I couldn't understand it yet. All I knew is that my mother started to beat me, my father started to beat me, my brother started to beat me. And I started looking at myself in the mirror and I started to hate who I saw, even as a kid. And I wondered to myself, why I wasn't good enough. What I could do to just finally come home and have my dad look at me and say, I'm proud of you, son. And I remember I lived in this hell for years and years and years until finally my parents divorced. And I found myself in a household living with my brother, who now was addicted to meth, and was now involved deeply in gangs, and to a father who could care less of what was happening to this deteriorating situation. I would come home to school not to a loving family, but to a father that would lock himself in his room at 10 o'clock at night, not ask me how my day was going. I would come home to a brother who's going through so many things within himself that he didn't know how to express it and would show me violence in that way. And I didn't know which way to turn. I didn't have an uncle to reach out to. I didn't have a family member that could come and tell me everything was going to be okay. So I turned to whatever was next. I turned to what I had to see every single day. And that was the gang members that I came home to day in and day out. And at the end of the day, they were the only ones there that could provide me any sense of family or love that I was looking for. And I remember one day I had got into such a low period in my life that I decided to try to take it. And I remember a couple months prior, my own brother tried to kill himself by overdosing on pills. And his heart stopped twice, and we got him to the hospital. And I remember when I went into that kitchen cabinet that night, I said, I'm not going to make that same mistake. I'm going to make sure that I finish the job this time. And I went into the kitchen cabinet, and I started to take handful after handful after handful of pills. I was 14 years old at this time. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm going to die alone, just the way I came into this world. And I started going in and out of convulsions, and I started to vomit, and I started feeling horrible. And I realized at that moment I didn't want to die. I was just a scared kid that was reaching out, crying out for help. And my dad came home, and I said, finally, it's going to be okay. And I ran to him. I said, Dad, can you just please take me to the hospital? I made such a big mistake. My dad looked, and he saw what happened, and he saw what I had did. And in that moment, his face just turned into pure rage. And he started to beat me. And I fell to the ground, and I remember his words. And he said, if you want to die so bad, now you're going to have to do it on your own. And I remember he locked himself in his room, and I crawled myself to my room, and I laid in pitch darkness. And for the next 3 days, I couldn't move, and I was vomiting blood. I just realized, if nobody cares about me, why do I care about myself? So I stopped caring about myself. I stopped caring about anything, really. And I started going in and out of jail as a kid. It's funny, you can't take pictures of people, but we got our own pictures. We snuck onto a computer. And We always find ways, but, I started going in and out of jail, and this was my new reality now. My new reality was one that was fenced around barbed wire. And I realized very early on that this was going to be the rest of my life. And by the time I was 17 years old, I was facing a 35-plus year sentence in prison. And for those that don't know, juveniles can get life sentences all the time. I know someone that was 14 and was sentenced to 200 years in prison for being next to someone that shot a gun that hit nobody. But because of our laws, there's so many ways to throw people in jail for the rest of their lives. And mind you, I came in to jail an angry person, a violent person. I came in and I was the one that was always constantly in fights. I was the kid that everybody looked at and said, forget about him, he's never going to change. Leave him out of our society. Lock the doors. He doesn't belong here. He's not worthy to come back home. And after 18 months of fighting my case, something happened. This kid that nobody wanted to talk to anymore, this kid that society had turned their backs on, who had no family, someone came into his life and said, I love you. And showed it by just showing up. One of the most powerful things we could do for one another is just show up. We don't have to have the answers. I think sometimes that's why we're afraid to reach out to people, because we don't know what to say. We don't know how to console them. But just being there, you don't have to know what to say. That changed my life. Someone said, James, you are worthy, and you are going to be someone someday, and you are going to change this world. And I see it in you. And in my mind, I'm saying, this person's nuts. I'm about to do 35 years in prison. But she kept doing it day in and day out. And finally, one day, it hit me that this person loved me, and I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know how to comprehend it. I didn't eat for 3 days straight because the emotion in my body was so foreign. And then finally, I just felt this peace. I felt this love, and I understood what it meant to be loved. And that changed my life. I realized on that moment forward that I was going to do everything in my power to change my life. Because whatever this love thing was, I'd be willing to risk my entire identity and everything I've ever known just to have it for one more moment. For those who are not familiar, it's one of the hardest things to walk away from that life, especially when that's the only thing you know. You have no idea what you're headed into. But the power of love is strong enough to overcome all of that. And I made a decision that I wanted to change my life, and I was one of the lucky ones that got a juvenile sentence for 7 years with a strike. And I went to the youth authority, which is the youth prison in California. And I land and I realized I want to change lives. I want people that are in my shoes to be able to have love. And people looked up to me because of who I was and how I transformed. And I help people realize that doesn't make you a weak person for changing your life. It just opens us up to a whole new future. And most people behind bars want to change their life. They just don't know how. They're afraid. And I ended up meeting someone named Scott Budnick, who became a good friend of mine and my brother. I'm actually one of his groomsmen in his wedding coming up in 2 weeks. And Scott Budnick is the executive producer of all the Hangover films. Funnily enough, he had a deep passion for people that were incarcerated. And me and him became brothers. He's now gone on to start his own film fund where he's now only going to be telling impactful stories because of how much his work has affected him. But we became good friends, and he told me about this amazing group of people that were coming home that were all formerly incarcerated. They were all system affected. And we wanted to do something powerful that had never been done before. And everybody said that we couldn't do it. Everybody said that it wasn't going to succeed. How are you going to gather hundreds of people that are formerly incarcerated and make this huge change? How are you going to lead policy efforts with people that aren't educated? And we created an organization that's roots and foundation were based on giving the people that have been through these circumstances the opportunity to fight for their own freedom, the opportunity to stand up and use their own voice. And thus, the Anti-Recidivism Coalition was created. Since being created, I came home 6 years ago. Since being created about a year and a half after coming home, the Anti-Recidivism has an annual budget of about $5.5 million. employs 40 people, most of them formerly incarcerated, has changed a huge, impactful amount of laws in California to now give people the opportunity to show that they have truly changed their lives. We have created housing so that when people come home, they're able to come home to an opportunity to be in a safe environment, to begin to rebuild their lives. We created employment opportunities. Behind me, you see a group of our cohort who, after surviving for 30 days out of our boot camp, where if they're not an hour early at 5 a.m., which means they have to show up at 4 a.m., they're out. If they go through a month and successfully make it, they get a permanent job in the union making $30 an hour, then now they can support their family. And the list goes on. And what we really strive for, right, is beyond union jobs, realizing that we could achieve whatever we wanted in life. We have people that have gone on to run for office. We have people that have gone on to manage multi-million-dollar projects. To come into an office and say, you can be whatever you want. I stopped asking the basic questions of, do you have a social security card, or if you have a driver's license, and I simply asked them, if you could do anything in your life, what would it be? And it's the same question I ask you. And if you know that answer, if you think you do, then why aren't you doing it? We talk about how short life is, but honestly, sit and think of it. We have one moment on this earth. Somehow we ended up here. Why not make the most of it? What's the worst that can happen? I also believe in creating opportunities. We take 40 of them on a whitewater river rafting trip every year. And to just see their faces be able to have an opportunity to live life and to explore is life-changing. I went on to have my own life and be able to travel the world, to meet with the President of the United States, to be recognized by Shepard Fairey, to be given an opportunity to graduate from UCLA with double honors, travel the world, hug random camels, just saying. I knew I made it when this happened. Life had completely changed. To give my brother a hug after coming home from 10 years in prison. Who I'm so proud of and has changed his life and is such an amazing human being. He learned how to code while he was in jail. They didn't have computers, so he learned how to handwrite code. Came home, got accepted into one of the best schools in the Bay Area, and is now on his way to join a huge tech company with a full-time job, making a lot more money than I did when I came home. And I'm so proud of him. But these kind of experiences that really helped to mold and change my life. And I realized, how do we give more of these opportunities to other people? We have to continue to grow. And for those of you that are in this crowd that have launched successful ventures, sometimes it's time to pass that baton on and to move on to the next, to continue to grow and create opportunities, and to not be afraid. I realized once ARC had grown into what it's become, I had to leave. And I had to continue to see how to create more and more opportunities and give other people a chance to lead. And it was frightening to be in the in-between phase of not knowing what the next thing was. But all it takes sometimes is a spontaneous trip to go snowboarding in Canada to change the entire equation. Sometimes it just takes saying yes. And I ended up on a mountain with 3 guys that were just as crazy as me. And I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And I realized that we needed to create more and more opportunity, because as I traveled outside of Los Angeles, I realized there lacks opportunity for people coming home. There's so many states and cities where people are just in hiding, where they don't have an opportunity to just live life and begin to build their future again, their present. So what does this organic beverage have to do with any of it? I go to say this because I decided I wanted to go to the corporate side. I was been playing with this idea of social entrepreneurship for so long, and I kind of started dabbling in it. But I wanted to make real impact and prove that any industry could make an impact. Regardless, if you just took the risk, it's never going to be easy, and the chance to go after it. Now, Guayaki Yerba Mate is an incredible company on its own. It reforests the rainforest, is on a path to reforest 200,000 acres, supports indigenous communities in South America. But there is an opportunity to make even more impact here. And thus we created a new company called the Yerba Mate Co. which now became the distribution end of this company, doing two things to completely revolutionize a market. One of those being creating the first distribution company across international lines to only use fossil fuel-free vehicles, which most people think is insane, but we realize that if you want to see change in the world, you sometimes have to be the first person. And that means that you're going to have to be the first person to go through all the mistakes as well. But the beautiful part about that is then you're then able to pass that on to others. Now, when I sat down with them, I said, if I come on board, there has to be something crazy that we try to achieve. There has to be something that is so mind-blowing that when we talk to people, they say, what are you talking about? How are you going to create a successful business off of that? And we decided that we were going to hire 10,000 people worldwide that were system affected. That means people coming out of prison, foster care kids aging out of the system, refugees, and to give people living wage jobs with full health care and the opportunity to once again build their lives, to have a future. They really caught my attention when they said, James, let's do that, and that's just the beginning. We have other things as well we want to do. We have other things that we want you to do. And it's amazing to be able to go in and realize, since I started in February, we've already hired 40 people full-time across the country. And to be able to come and hear their stories to say, James, this changed my life. It saved my life. It gave me an opportunity to once again live. All of us have a talent. All of us have a gift. And the most important gift that we can give anyone is love and to believe in them. I often say that I believe we are too rational for our own good. We forget that we're on this planet that's spinning through space that we've tried to understand and describe. But if you ever sit outside under a full night sky of stars, you realize we don't know anything. You realize that it's so magnificent, so undescribable, that we simply could not have all the answers of why we are here, how this is real. Which means that every single person's dream in this room is tangible, reachable, and all it takes is for you to believe, for you to look at the world and realize it needs you to take action on these wonderful thoughts. It needs you to believe in yourself, to live to your fullest potential, to fight for others, to give others an opportunity to find life, to find love, and to remember that as we enter into these new years where we see the world in more turmoil, more problems, that you can look back at the end of your life and realize that you were one of the few that decided to stand while everyone else decided to sit. And I'm saying, I used to say that all the time. I say, no, now let's turn to that person that's sitting and let's help them up. Because living a life of purpose gives everyone such an opportunity to really give to this earth all of the amazingness that they hold within. Thank you.